Hey y'all, I'm Daniel and this is Deacon Outdoors. Hey guys, welcome back. Get to spend a day at the shooting range with my daughter for Father's Day, which is really cool that I'm able to do that with my girls. They both still like going with me and shooting, so I take advantage of it every time I can. So she's going to be up here with me shooting the 6.5. I'm going to be shooting the 7mm 08 and working on my load development a little bit more on the seating depth. I had the video yesterday of doing different seating depths. So I've got the Rangecraft set up there. So I'll go ahead and get started here and see what we can do. So I'm going to start with 43.5 grains at 15 thousandths jump. Looks like you're just a little bit high to the right. See what we can do. Yeah. Ooh. I'm gonna let this cool down a little bit, shoot my 22 while it's cooling, so stay tuned. Hey guys, I'm finally getting around to showing you all the targets from my seating depth work that I did last weekend. I'm gonna switch the camera around where I can show you the targets, so hang on just a second. So if you remember my 43.5 grain and 44 grain that I shot here a few weeks ago that give me the very low SD and ES numbers, I wanted to see if I could change the accuracy and keep the same lower SD and ES numbers by changing the seating depth. Well, that was not the case. This is my 43.5 grain charge with 15 and 20 thousandths jumps. You can see the numbers and the groups increase substantially, and then 15 and 30 thousandths, or 25 and 30 thousandths, sorry. But this was my tightest group out of all of them I shot last Saturday, but it's still not the greatest. And then I went to 44 grain. There's my 15 and 20 thousandths jumps. And then here is 25 and 30 thousandths. You can see this group is just ridiculous. So from that, I did start doing a little more research through Hornady, and several places that I've read and listened to about hand loading is most of the testing that they did was at the higher end of the scale with powder charge and seating depth jump. The pressure differences whenever you start opening up your jump to the lands is decreased. And from what I'm understanding and figuring out is the higher end of the pressures within the SAAMI spec. This is not above that by no means. So if you have a, like I've showed you on the loading charts, you have a minimum maximum, they would hit the maximum, maybe come down a couple grains or 10th grains and leave it at that. But the testing that I got to researching, they were close to max load on the powder, and they were shooting anywhere from 15 to 20 thousandths jump at that max pressure, or I'm sorry, at that max load. And they were getting their lower SDs and extreme spreads at that point. So that's something I got to test. Don't know. Other than that, like I've said before, hand loading is a deep rabbit hole. And if you get started using a chronograph, it's very easy to start chasing that rabbit. Because before, whenever I would do load development, I just went until I got the tightest group possible and left it there. Now I find myself chasing numbers, and to me, it's a hobby. I'm not doing this for a career. I'm not doing this for a job. This is a hobby to me. I like learning all I can about the ballistics of what I'm doing, what affects the numbers. Can I tighten those numbers? How do I tighten those numbers to get the best possible round? That's just me. I know a lot of the ones that I have watched podcasts with, and they don't spend a whole lot of time ladder testing or anything like that. But this is, like I said, this is a hobby. I like learning all of that because I don't have that knowledge under my belt. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the bullet and see what I can do. I'd like to try to stay with one powder across the board for 6.5 and 708 if I can. So I'm going to change from the Sierra Game Kings to a Hornady or Nosler and see what we can do there with the 708. See if we can get these numbers back down into the singles or close to the singles instead of 20s and 30s on the extreme spreads. But something else that I wanted to talk about is I'm going to change the build series a little bit. Still going to do all the same things. Everything's going to be the same thing with the build series. The only exception is going to be in a different caliber. So I recently got another barrel coming with a company that I believe I'm going to be working with quite a bit from here on out. I'll go into more detail later once I get the barrel from them. And I'm having a 6.5 Creedmoor built by this company. And the reason I chose to go back and do the Creedmoor instead of 708 is I still have a 708 barrel on order. It's been on order for 3 months. But I know a lot of people, if you've been around shooting and rifles and been involved with that for any amount of time, you already know the advantages of going from a lightweight pencil barrel, hunting contour barrel to a target barrel or a bull barrel. You already know the differences. So I kind of got to thinking about that and thought, that's kind of not really a true good comparison of going from a factory bought gun to a more custom build. Because, like I said, I know what's going to happen going from that barrel to a bull barrel. So that was the reason to go back to the 6.5. The gun I bought, the 110 Tactical with the 24-inch 6.5 Creedmoor target barrel, is going to be more apples to apples comparison with a custom barrel. So that will give us a better test to see what kind of advantages that you get from a factory heavy barrel to a custom heavy barrel. So that was the big driver behind switching back to the 6.5 Creedmoor, is for that reason. I honestly, like I said, if you've been around this long enough, you know what is going to happen going from a target or a hunting barrel to a bull barrel or target barrel. Not going to waste my time, not going to waste your time, because I already know it's going to be a huge accuracy increase from those two. Can I dial in that hunting barrel? Yes. But to sustain it being so small, it's going to heat up really fast. It already does with what I'm doing with these hand loads. I can't get more than 5 shots, and the barrel's almost to the point of not being able to touch it. You don't have that with a heavy barrel. So heat affects your accuracy. So I could shoot 10 or 15 shots through that barrel, but my accuracy is going to go to crap. So I'm not going to waste my time doing a comparison with two completely different ends of the spectrum when it comes to barrels. So we're going to do 2 target barrels. We're going to do the 6.5 Savage target barrel, and then we're going to do a custom 6.5 barrel. And like I said, I'll talk a little bit more about it whenever it gets here, and talk about the company a little bit. Great company, great people that I've talked to. Like I said, I'll go into more of that later on. But as far as the load development goes, the 708 Creedmoor, or as far as the load development goes, I'm still going to do load development on the 708. That barrel is going to get moved over to my Axis, which is in the MDT chassis. It's already got the trigger job done. It's already got the bolt job done. Everything's done on that rifle, except I'm going to switch it over to 708 because, like I said, I still have a 708 barrel coming. That's just not going to be a build series gun. That's going to be load developing a 708. But I'm not going to get too crazy with videos on that because I want to do it with the build series. So everything's changing as far as caliber. Still going to do the same component swaps. Still going to do the same mods. Everything that I had planned. It's just now it's going to be for a 6.5 Creedmoor. So I'm starting over. A few of the things that I've already done are still going to be the same things that I'll do with the Creedmoor. So I'm not going to change that stuff a whole lot. I'm not going to dive too much deeper into hand loading, other than I want to change bullets and start out that route. And then once I kind of start narrowing it down, then I'll start throwing up some more videos on that. But that's where I'm at. And yeah, so rifle build series is still on, different caliber. And I can tell you, I'm looking forward to actually doing a target barrel versus target barrel, factory versus custom, because I've already kind of did it with my 1022. I know what it shot with the factory Hammer Forge bull barrel, and I've now got a Green Mountain barrel on it, and it shoots so much better than what it did with the factory barrel. Not knocking the Ruger barrel because it was very accurate, but the accuracy with the bullets I'm shooting is what changed. So I'm kind of anxious. That was another driver of why I changed over to the 6.5 Creedmoor with the target barrel. I shoot CCI Blazers for steel matches, and whenever I had the factory Ruger bull barrel, it did not shoot CCI Blazers very well. It shot Elys quite well, and it shot standard velocity CCIs very well. The Green Mountain not only shot the Elys very well and the Standards very well, but the CCIs shot extremely well, the Blazers. So I shot several different ones through that barrel, and there is a big difference between a factory bull and a custom bull. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to leave it at that. That's why I've changed, and we're going to move forward with a Creedmoor for this build series and load series. And that's all I got for this one. We'll see you on the next one.